They were born in bloody circumstance. To go, leave me, run like you've never run before. A voice from the underground, given room to breathe, not be drowned. So die if you get the chance. Better men than you've been, let this dance. To go, leave me, run like you've never run before. I have seen the worst, and there is nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me away. To go, leave me, run like you never did. No, believe me, run like you've never run before.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the Scottish Rugby podcast brought to you by the Scottish Rugby blog. I am Cammy Black. It's episode 3 of our British and Irish Lions 2021 special. We will talk about the Lions tonight. We've got some exciting stuff to cover beforehand because there's been various bits of news today that we need to get through first. And joining me to wade through the news, we've got John Anderson. Good evening, John.
Good evening, Cammy. I'm glad I'm just about on time for you as well.
I know, but that game, I was worried because the thing is, I watch on Now TV, and there's a significant delay on Now TV.
Yeah.
There's a 3-day delay if you want to watch a match back.
Yeah, I mean, it was approaching. I was watching kind of kickoff time, and I'm thinking, yeah, we're on at 9. This is going to be close. But yeah, we got there. We arrived in time.
We're within the 9-minute allotted time that we're allowed by Facebook to be late by. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're also joined by Craig Manson. Good evening, Craig.
Good evening. How are we doing?
Very well, Craig. Have you both had a good weekend?
Yeah, not bad. Not bad. I think it's been one of those weeks as well. It's I'm quite glad I'm over through Wednesday now and getting on to Thursday, and we'll soon see the weekend come up again.
Definitely, yeah. We'll see who the Lions are playing on Saturday as well, eh?
Well, more on that later. We are live at the minute on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook and Twitch. So if you're watching us live, feel free to get involved in the comments and we'll pick out some of the best ones and have a wee chat about them. You can visit the blog, scottishrugbyblog.co.uk, for all the latest news and views from the world of Scottish rugby. You can also, if you want to, get ad-free versions of this podcast, as well as exclusive content by visiting patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast, and you can subscribe for £3 a month. For that, like we said, you get exclusive episodes plus you get ad-free versions of the podcast. Plus, we do a little mini version where I cut out all the nonsense, and you just get the focused on the main talking points. So, speaking of talking points, there was some rather surprising news today. Nobody saw this coming whatsoever. I don't think anybody. I think anybody who saw this coming is likely to be very rich indeed, because they have powers of foresight of which has not been known to man before. Guinness were very quietly dropped as the sponsor of the United Rugby Championship last week, I think, or earlier this week. And there was a wee message that went on and that said, "Thank you, Guinness, for all your support." And I thought, that's weird. They've just launched this big United Rugby Championship, a huge rebrand. What's going on there? Or Guinness just not stumping up the cash, or they're struggling for a sponsor that's not great for a start of a competition. And then it was announced today that the United Rugby Championship, formerly the Pro 14, formerly the Magners League, formerly the Celtic League, is now sponsored by Jay-Z. And that's not even a joke.
No,
Right? It's sponsored by the United Rugby Championship is now sponsored by Rock Nation, which is ROC Nation. I really feel for whoever at the SRU has to go to the SRU council and explain who Jay-Z is to the council, because I bet you not a single one of them knows who he is.
yeah, it was interesting news, wasn't it? And like, most of us were sitting there going, "Oh, Guinness have been dropped. Oh, yes, thank goodness." I thought that might have happened when Hogg criticised the sponsor's product in the Six Nations a few years ago, but no. I mean, yeah. So, United Rugby Fighting Championship has got cool.
We are now the cool kids of World Rugby, Craig. I mean, this is genuinely for me, this is the most exciting thing that has happened in rugby, full stop, for years.
I actually, it's how to turn the negative into a positive, right? I was sitting there going, when I saw Guinness finish up with Guinness, I thought, "Oh, Guinness have taken their toys away and playing, so they're going to go and play somewhere else." And now the Ultimate Fighting Championship is going to have about 6 million different. They're going to have to look like a Scarlet's top with all this 600 million different sponsors on it. But now, then they come out with this. Is absolutely fantastic, and makes. I'm just waiting. All this Gallagher Premiership, that's the best of this, and all of this, that, the other. Just look at us now. We are the cool kids.
Yeah, we are indeed. Now we've got a bit of inside information on this from someone very close to the United Rugby Championship, because it did take us by surprise. So we reached out and we kind of just said, "What's going on?" One, we kind of were looking to see if we could play the awesome promo video they've got that's got a Jay-Z track on underneath it, but there wouldn't be a problem with us playing it. But we might accidentally fall foul of Jay-Z's lawyers accidentally. I'm sure he'd be happy for us to play it, but we best not, in case we get banned from all our channels. But so the inside track on this is really interesting. So this has come about through CVC, which is really, I mean, I think we were very skeptical of why a CVC investing in the Pro 14 as it was at the time. We're not very marketable. I think at that point the South Africans were looking like they were coming on board, but there was no guarantee that was going to happen. Yeah. So there was a lot of skepticism. And essentially, what CVC have done, they don't have much day-to-day involvement in the league or the run of the league, but they act as fixers in a sense. They made the introductions to Rock Nation. They said that we work with these guys on other things. We can introduce you and get you in the room with them. Rock Nation have already invested in the South Sea Sharks. I think they're part owners of the South Sea Sharks in South Africa. They've already, on their books, and we'll go to their website, they're already they're really interested in rugby, apparently. They see that as a big growth sport. So on their books already, they've got Chelson Colby, Mario Otoji, Subud Nkosi, Sia Kolisi, and Tendai Matawira. So they're already looking at big promotions in South Africa and really heavily invest in there. So it makes sense for them then to invest in the competition the South African teams are now in. Now then, what's even more interesting is that Rock Nation, their kind of whole thing is they're not interested in the clubs. and I think this is where I think actually this might suit the league. They're not interested in the clubs; they're interested in the players. They're interested in giving the players a platform to talk about any work they're doing in the community and any social justice causes that they have, and boosting that. I mean, they represent Marcus Rashford, for example. And I don't think anybody for a second is going to say that we're going to, we've got a Marcus Rashford in waiting somewhere, lurking in the depths of the Embra squad. But that's what they want to do, as the league and as Rock Nation, is to get these players and say, look, if you want to transcend the sport of rugby, we can help you do that. But you're going to have to come to us with something other than I am really good at rugby. You're going to have to come to us with a cause that you think is worthy. So Ashton Hewitt was the first name that came to mind. I think there's a guy, very outspoken, uses his platform to talk about issues about racism in rugby, about racism in wider society. That's what they're looking to do. And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be about social justice causes. They're saying work in the community as well is just as important. That's what they want to do, because that's how they see growing the sport. If you have big names playing week in, week out in the United Rugby Championship, which we've talked about before, the way this format's going to work, and with the South African team's going to have to play, the team is going to have to play their big name players. If you've got big name players, people will come and watch the rugby who don't normally watch rugby, Craig. So it's quite an exciting thing, this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if there's anything that's going to bring more people to rugby, the big thing is, I know that they're not interested in the clubs, but if it'll be great to see. First of all, the I keep calling it the UFC. I'm going to have to stop that.
No, you don't. Keep going.
Every time I go, Ultimate Rugby Championship, I think, it's not that. Every time I,
Look, the long game is, Craig, is I want an interview with Jay-Z on this podcast, so don't mess it up for me.
Okay, well, I'm not going to mess it up here. I'll stop. But yeah, I think if we can get as many people down to Edinburgh, to Glasgow, to support those two teams, it's going to be the better for us. And then hopefully we may eventually get the much vaunted third team into Scotland as well. You never know. All of these things could come along.
Well, I think, no, definitely. If the sport expands, I think technically we still hold a franchise ticket somewhere down the back of the cupboards on the back of the sofa in Murrayfield. But John, it is kind of exciting, John, that we've got. I would say at the minute, if you were to speak to anybody that didn't know rugby about who plays for Edinburgh and Glasgow, people would still say Stuart Hogg.
Yeah, and actually, it's quite interesting because you still see that that rhetoric actually in people that don't understand the pro club game in Scotland. You do see the Stuart Hogg, the Glasgow player, or Finn Russell, the Glasgow player, and people haven't really caught up with the pro game in Scotland or kept tabs with it, and I think that's partially. It's partially our fault as well, in that it was all.
Well, we do a weekly podcast, John.
No. I'm not specifically meaning our problem. I mean, we've done our best to sell Ratu Tagivi as the next Messiah, but it's partially. I think, particularly the pro club game in Scotland. It did stop a lot. Now, Edinburgh have done their best to kind of promote some of the players they have over there. But ultimately, the superstars of Scottish rugby left in the last 3 seasons. Johnny Gray, Stuart Hogg, Finn Russell. They left.
I will just interrupt you with Hamish Watson. Thank you very much.
Hamish Watson's now the new darling of Scottish rugby. He was not. He is
a superstar.
Do you know what? You're absolutely right. He absolutely is. But if you think about the 3 players that I've talked about, right? Stuart Hogg and Finn Russell in particular, their backs. Backs are exciting. Forwards, we love a forward, right? We love a forward. However, supporters that are just casually looking at the game, they love the end to end try against Exeter. They love the little chip kicks, the little miss passes. They don't necessarily get off on the Hamish bumping 17 players off in one run.
But I disagree with that. I also think if you look at who they're representing for Rock Nation, they obviously see a market for forwards. I don't think they're necessarily just looking. I agree with it. So I think Hamish Watson's an interesting one because I think there's someone that could fit this mold of what they're looking to do with the game. I'm just not sure if it's something that he would want to do, and I think there's a lot of personal choice with the players. I think he's got his hat business. I want to say I think caps is technically what the kids would call them. I call them hats. He's a haberdasher. He's got his cap business, Rex Club, which that's would fit right in with what they're probably looking at doing. But if you look at, they've got Sia Khaleesi on the books, and the reason I think a lot of people outside of rugby would know about Sia Khaleesi or would say is he is a guy that talks from his heart and shares a lot about his personal life and a lot about where he's come from and his history. And I don't know how comfortable that sits with Hamish Watson. So I think there'll be players who are who will be happy to play rugby and earn money playing rugby and do very well at it. It's looking at the guys who are willing to, I suppose, step forward and say, this is me, this is who I am, I've got some things to say. And at the minute, I'm struggling to see who that is in Scottish rugby.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think it would be an interesting one. For me, it would be this is an ideal opportunity to get into the schools, get into the local community rather than the pay schools, etc., the Merkies and all this, that, and the other. I think you're going to. I think if there was someone like, for example, Finn Russell, someone like I'm just trying to think who else.
Brodie Duncan's suggesting Darcy Graham. That's not a bad shot, actually.
Yeah. Well, there's Suz as well. I don't think Rory Sutherland came through White, did he not? And so I don't think I'm not going to say he's an absolute box office, but I think he's going to be a fantastic. He's going to be
ultimately.
A star,
I think what have these guys got to say? That for me is
that's
the
the
issue.
question.
What have these guys got to say? Suz has got nothing to say. He came through a system. Yeah, he's been part from quite a young age. He's got probably Finn Russell's the one that stands out to me. He's actually got quite a lot to say because he was discarded from the system. He was never part of it, and then all of a sudden he's like this world-class fly half. He got a chance and he took it. He's probably the only one that stands out.
I think Suz potentially has got something to say. Rory Sutherland's talked a lot about mental health and his own, the setbacks that he's had. So I think that there is that. I think that's where I see it coming from Scottish rugby. Fraser Brown, for example, big kind of advocate of mental health and very open about how it's affected him. So I think if there are players in Scotland who are willing to step up, and there've been a couple, I think Sutherland and Brown are two, to step up and start talking about these things and using Rock Nation as an avenue of doing it, then it's only going to help their careers, and I think it'll help the sport as well. I think it's just it's who's going to take that step forward though, because I think that's what they're looking for now at the URC and Rock Nation are looking for the guys that are going to do the Marcus Rashford stuff, who are going to kind of stand there and take the slings and the arrows and, say stuff for the greater good. And what they will get back is a bigger profile, and what the sport gets back as it grows.
You've got to wonder as well, like, there's a question here, and, we've all been part of this system. How much freedom are Scottish rugby players going to have to actually speak out?
Yeah. I think that's the key thing, isn't it? The Glasgow, Edinburgh, and the SR unit all tends to be kind of within one. It's all centrally controlled. And Glasgow and Edinburgh have got some autonomy in the way that they run things, but it's how much Scottish rugby buys into this and allows the players to buy into it. The person I was speaking to today was saying, that they're looking for alternative ways to do things now, other than a post-match press conference where the players give stock answers, but it needs players, like you said, John, to be given the freedom. And it sounds like, from what I've heard, they're talking to the players directly, and they're talking to the players' representatives, as in the players' unions, directly. So there might be that if the ERC or the URC can get that direct access to players, then that might help. But like you said, because they're all centrally contracted within Scotland,
It's never going to be the case that they're going to get that freedom. It's
would
never
be-
going to be
yeah.
the case.
Look, this is us just saying, let them, let really hope that the SRU embrace this for the opportunity that it is,
Yep.
and don't shoot themselves in the foot by shutting the doors and not using this to set the players free.
Yeah,
They've got a lot
I think
of-
also.
yeah.
No, well, I think also you've also got to look at, for example, the Stuart Hoggs, the Finn Russells, the Johnny Greys, etc. I'm not just picking on those three because they're Glasgow players. It's because, well, they're no longer Glasgow players. But what I'm looking at is they're now becoming. They're now in the last maybe 3-4 years of their rugby playing life, maybe to the next Rugby World Cup. So you've now got to look at who's coming through. And the issue we have at this moment in time is the guys that are coming through, they're naturally guided by the Scottish rugby marketing machine, and they are becoming more and more, yeah, it was a great game, the boys did well, that's it. We don't have we may have the personalities, as in the skilled personalities coming through, but we don't have their personality coming through, and that's going to. I would reckon if they're going to want something, Rock Nation is going to want younger players, people that are going to make a difference for a long time with them, rather than the players that maybe only have another 3-4 years in them.
Yeah, well, the worry is as well that I want is that Rock Nation are essentially act as agents for the players as well now. So a lot of Scottish players and young players are signing on to agencies from a young age. So whether or not there's an element of protection as well, or whether the current agents are willing to work with Rock Nation to promote the personalities. But it's interesting. I mean, what Grant Swart says, the one thing that I'm missing is Rock Nation are looking at players of colour in rugby. That's in short supply in Scotland. And I think that, there's no denying that is what Rock Nation are looking for. I'm looking at their roster and looking at their performer. They have white play. They do represent white players in association football. I would say association football because they also represent football players and NFL players.
NFL, yeah.
But that is the reason. That's why they've got into, that's why they've got into South African rugby. But the opportunity. That's not to say the opportunities aren't there for anyone willing to take it.
I think it's down to whether the player has a story to tell. And do you know what? There's a comment come in regarding a certain player being in a wheelchair and things like that. And do you know what they're wanting is they want more people playing this game because they want supporters, they want fans, they want everyone investing in this game. They don't want to hear about people in a wheelchair because ultimately that's really not a great thing for a rugby player, right? And whether you come back from that or not, that's a great story. And you know what? We're all invested in that story. And I think the player in discussion has been phenomenal coming back from that. But ultimately, it's about the feel good stories. It's much more simple.
It's the getting fighting for free school meals. It's going into your community and setting, training the minis every week and being connected to your local community. It's
the Khaleesi, it's the Rashford. That's it in a nutshell. That's all they want to hear because that's really, really good for their brand just now.
Yeah, and that means that transcends outside. That message then gets outside of the sport.
Yep.
So that's. Yeah.
And Scottish rugby doesn't have that story. We don't have that story just now.
Ross McDowell would disagree. Tom Gordon is the man for Rock Nation.
I think Ross is ambitious in his. I mean, Tom Gordon's the man for everything, but in this instance, he is not. I don't think Tom will be getting signed by Rock Nation. Sadly.
We'll see. I would love to see that. That's what I want to see. It would be wonderful.
What's going on?
We've had a couple of puns based on this. We've had Ross. Once again, Ross says, "I see John Tannen as Can, not so much Jay-Z, more like JK."
That's JK.
JK.
He's looking like a JK.
JK. Ross is a creative type. He'll be getting punished. So Ross on Saturday, because of his nonsense, like the BPM of the songs we play will probably increase about 25%, and Ross will struggle to keep up.
So, for those that don't know, John is the drummer and Ross is in a band.
Ross is back,
Rugby Morning says it's 99 meters on the pitch I've run.
I love that.
We had a few on Twitter earlier today, so I had 99 problems, but Hendricks ain't one. Shoe man, me what you got. Show me what you got. Hell Nell brackets pimp the system. Turnover instead of takeover. Can't knock the Russell. I know he doesn't play for the RC anymore, but still works instead of hustle. Justify my shug. Hugh Jones. Omani cash hose instead of money cash hose. Hard cock life. That's because of course Vincent that plays in South Africa.
Yep.
Rock me with you. You know I got it.
I'm just sitting here quietly, just agreeing with you because I hardly know any Jay-Z, so I'll just agree with you. I'm more of a classic hip hop kind of guy, so I'm not. I've got a couple of Jay-Z albums, but I'm not. I had to Google some of these. Big as in Paris was Ian Hayes one.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, so that's yeah. If you've got any more puns during the show, feel free to get in touch. It's a hard knock on.
It's a hard knock on. Rugby Morning has got this down.
Yeah. So the other bits, we're going to do Lions tonight. We could talk about the Scotland under-20s last night, against Wales, but let's not.
Let's not.
I think we'll just go straight into Lions chat, shall we?
Let's jingle.
Go for it.
It's the legally mandated Lions chat. The legally mandated Lions chat. We've heard so much about it that it makes us sick, but we've still got to chat about who Gatlin's gonna pick.
Yes, it is the legally mandated Lions chat. So we are recording this, I say immediately after the Lions game against South Africa A, but after all the Jay-Z puns, we're about half an hour after the match is finished now. And last week we talked about the first Cell C Sharks game. That's a tongue twister.
Try saying that 5 times fast, Cam.
Cell C Sharks sell sea shells on the seashore. The Cell C Sharks sell seashells, I'm sure. There you go.
Very good. Yeah, that's impressive.
Thank you. So, in terms of what, shall we just? I mean, the game that just happened. There are varying opinions, depending on where what you read before the match. That was close to a test squad versus it was another run out for some combinations, and let's see how we go. I fall into the latter camp of they were testing some different combinations, and I don't think they've settled on a test squad. Yeah, where are you with that team that was put out tonight, Craig?
I'm totally with you on that one, Cammy. I was sitting there looking at it, thinking to myself, there is no way. Looking at some of the combinations that were on the park, and especially somehow some of the players that were missing. I don't see that as a test team at all. There were some gaping holes in there of people that were missing, and I really do think that tonight was a gameplay on. Everyone's going on about how Razzie had Gatlin's number tonight. I think Gatland has got Razzie's number, and especially when it comes to Dan Bigger rolled his ankle in training, and we've decided that we're going to put Farrell in at 10 instead of Bigger. We're just let's see what happens there.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, John? Because South Africa, on the other hand, put out the South Africa in inverted commas A team, but there was a hell of a lot of first choice Springboks playing tonight.
There absolutely was. But do you know what? See, when the test matches with Georgia get cancelled and things like that, you knew you knew that South Africa A was never going to be anything more than an opportunity for a team that hasn't played much in 2 years to get some game time. And do you know what? I think Razi and the guys have done exactly what every single one of us would have done. They've given an opportunity to say, do you know what? You're 10 days out from a test against the British and Irish Lions. Let's just go and throw you out there. You'll get midweek off. You'll get plenty of recovery. But let's go and get a wee run out. And do you know what? They look decent. They look decent for a rusty side. They look decent.
The discipline was maybe a little bit asking, I would say, though, tonight. It wasn't.
But that comes with time. That, you know, see if you're not playing test matches. Like I think to be fair to the British and Irish Lions, they did put pressure and they asked the right questions. South Africa defended like their lives depended on it, and it was the discipline in particular came from consistent issues. I mean, Faf de Klerk's yellow card, you could argue, was it really a yellow card? I mean, he contacted the guy in the arm.
Was it not?
There was a wrap. There was a wrap, though.
You see, I disagree. He tucked his left arm, and he went in. I don't think he was purposely going with his shoulder to have a go at someone's head. But I think I was actually having a discussion with my son about it. You know, Faf de Klerk's not a bad, nasty player. He's just far too. What's the word? He was reckless tonight, and he just was just throwing. He was, as I talk about Charlie Shields, slightly in a different way, but he was just trying to make. Yeah. And I think he was just unlucky. You know, I really don't think he was. I really honestly don't think he was tucking his arm to belt someone in the head with his shoulder. You know.
This is Alan McDonald saying there was less so rap than in West End Girls, John. A hell of a reference.
Yeah, that's Alan. You never cease to surprise with your references. That's beautiful, Alan. Thank you, son.
Should we talk about the Scottish Lions then over the last two matches?
Yep.
So the two tonight then we had Chris Harris playing 13, and Chris Harris who played 12 at the weekend as well.
Yeah,
I thought he did all right at 12. He had a good game.
It was spot on.
I think he was at a point where everyone. Well, in fact, tonight, if you see all the punditry that was going on tonight, they were talking about Chris Harris as a test nailed on test starter.
Yep.
So I think he's done a phenomenal job. He did well at 12. I don't think he was out of his depth, but he looked nervous. But he did well. And then tonight, I think he did incredibly well in his usual position, apart from being absolutely skinned by Colby. But that's a different story.
The thing is, though, I think with
Was
the
he
Colby,
though? Was he though?
Well, with the Colby one, he did a good. He was the only one that made any effort to try and scrag him. Lewis Shree-Sammet looked absolutely lost.
Yeah,
because it was Lewis Shree-Sammet's man to tackle, because if it's the Steve Tandy zonal defence thing, he runs right into Lewis Shree-Sammet's space. Harris is chasing the shadow at that point.
Yeah, Sammet just goes, "Nope, goodbye, son. I am not having this tonight." It was, I thought Harris was very unlucky to be getting any sort of ping for that, and I think when the coaches look at that, will not be his man. It'll be Lewis Shree-Sammet.
His pass to Lewis Shree-Sammet as well, that long looping pass. I mean, I think we said on our group chat, John, that's Duhan. That's a score every time.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you just have to look at the combinations. And right, I'm not criticising the guy because he got a stupid lightning bolt in his head, but I thought Lewis Shree-Sammet was utterly ghastly tonight. I thought he was really, really poor. And actually, I think he's been really poor on tour, actually, and he's living on reputation of being the speedster. See, against an organised international defence, right, you get away with it in the Six Nations, you score the odd try, you look like an absolute player. See, against a decent Southern Hemisphere defence that's not going to let you do that, you look like an average player. You look like an idiot. And Shree-Sammet is starting to look like that. He's an average rugby player. His defensive capability is poor.
I think you're right. I think defensively there's questions. I thought he did quite well to get I think he got a penalty off, milked penalty off Faf. And Faf was kind of blocking him at one point.
Faf was giving out penalties for like sweeties.
Oh,
the
yeah.
night.
But you're right. I think defensively, I don't think he's got the step that Colby has, or even Darcy
No.
Graham has. To be honest, I think you're right. I think he's a very good finisher, and that he's fast and he gets on the end of things. But that gets you so far. I mean, it's fine if you get on the end of chip overs and stuff like that. It's got its place, but I don't think that he offers the same as what you're going to get from Duhan. For example, I think Duhan's defense has got better over the tour. I think he's the Lions have done him the world of good. Yeah, he's still rough around the edges, but you give him the ball and he'll burst through defenders and burst through tackles. Lewis Sama isn't going to do that, and Duhan's got the pace as well.
There's a difference between giving a 6'5", 18.5 stone monster who can run just as fast, slightly less than Lewis Sama. Give him the ball in any sort of space, he's going to destroy defenders. He's going to take 2-3 men to bring him down. Lewis Sama is not that player. He needs clear space, and that's not what international rugby is about anymore. You don't get clear space as a winger. You need to make your work. You need to make your tries. You need to be a rugby player. Like we always joke about wingers not being rugby players. You need to be a rugby player now. I think for me actually in midweek, looking at Duhan's work rate at the breakdown, and just thinking that guy hitting the breakdown. Oh my God, he's so big. But he had technique, he had everything he needed, and he smashed breakdowns and he won ball for the Lions. You don't get that from wingers necessarily. That's what you need.
You get from Darcy Graham. That's who you get from.
Yeah, you do. You
Darcy.
absolutely do.
I think you would get. I think that's where both Duhan and also Adams have come into their own.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think if that ball goes to either of them, they're scoring that try. Because they're more physical. My concern, and it all does go down to the haircut and different things like that, is the fact I think he's starting to believe his own hype, and the worry for that is that he needs players around him that will create the tries for him. Now, okay, fair enough. Chris Harris at 13 will create the tries for him because that's what he does day in day out at Gloucester. But he needs a Finn Russell to be kicking the ball through. He needs all these different things to chase the ball down. But he wasn't. They keep slapping, and I'm one of them. I'll put my hand up, slapping Dewey around for not being great for a high ball. Zamet wasn't very good on a high ball tonight as well.
No, it's interesting. I think the way that tonight was interesting because I think it did more for the players that weren't playing than the ones who
Absolutely.
were. I think Harris is maybe the exception to that, and I think he was the exception to the first half on Saturday as well. I know it sounds making lots of excuses for Scottish players, and I know we're the Scottish Rugby podcast, but I genuinely,
we're allowed to do that.
Yeah, I think Duhan's one that I think if you look at, I think Duhan's. When we talked about this last week, is on the verge of making the test team. I don't think he makes the bench because I don't think he offers enough versatility from the bench. So he has to be good enough to start. So if you look at you potentially looking at a back three of Adams, Hogg, and Duhan, because the others, Liam Williams was all right. I think he went off for an HIA tonight. He's been all right, apart from when he's played. Anthony Watson, I thought, has been distinctly average, and again, he picked up a knock tonight. He's picked up an injury tonight.
Yeah,
Daly's played better at 13, and I think you'd want, if you're going to pick Daly somewhere, is going to be the bench because you can shift him if you hit a run of injuries.
Yeah.
So I think Duhan's. Surprisingly, because I wouldn't have put him there at the start, but I think Duhan has played his way into to starting the test, John.
I think he's really embraced the Lions culture, and I think the thing that Duhan's done better than probably anyone for me, he was a guy that needed to go looking for work right from the off, and he's got that physical frame, he's got that ability to break tackles, but. Like, it was really interesting, actually, in the midweek game. Every single turnover ball the Lions shipped wide. And it wasn't they didn't go one way. They didn't go to the other wing. They went to Duhan. They went, right, you go, you get us on front football. That's a tactic. That's someone who's saying this guy's going to get us front football. And against the type of wingers they're going to be facing in South Africa, they need that. And I think he has played himself into a test spot, which I agree with you. I would never have predicted that. He was probably out of the 8 Scottish Lions, he was probably maybe 7th for a test spot at the start. But he has performed and he's done exactly what he needs to do. And we all knew he was capable of it, but he's done it better than everyone else around him. And that's exactly what we're looking for.
I think that, and Craig, it's Duhan coming off his wing isn't something we've seen, and I know there's reasons for that at Edinburgh because of the way Edinburgh play, and it's not necessarily that we've talked about that again before on the podcast that Richard Cockrell. It's not something Cockrell's necessarily looking for his wingers to do, but it's something that they're allowed to do for Scotland, and we haven't seen Duhan do it an awful lot. But he has popped up in midfield quite a lot on this tour, and that's that's a really good thing for Scotland, I think, in the longer term for him.
Yeah. I've seen it on a regular basis. I have seen him come off his wing looking for ball. He's always been looking for ball. That whether he gets it playing in an Edinburgh shirt is a different story. Where Tooney has given him it in a Scotland shirt, and you're seeing it happen a little bit more with him. And then in the Lions, I think he's there's a mixture of he's being coached to look for ball, but also he's in South Africa. He's in and around the people who have sent him away and said, no, we're not going to give you a shirt. Of course he's going to play absolutely, to the maximum that he can play. To say to these people, well, if he's any sort of person, he's going to be saying to them, look at what you have lost. Yep. So I think I'm very, very happy to see him playing himself into the Lions squad if he gets there, because into the test team, I should say, because I think he's been fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Let's see. So Xander was the other Scot tonight. Came on quite late. To be fair, John, there was a knock on. I thought he went backwards, but he did all right in the scrum. The scrums went well when he came on. But he's not been used an awful lot on tour.
No. There seems to be. So I think part of the issue is that Xander's been paired with Mako, and Mako is horse, right? There's no other words for it. He is utterly ghastly. And do you know what? See, as a professional rugby player, I'm going to be really controversial here, but I'm going for it. See, as a professional rugby player, see if Mako Vunipola gets picked for the Lions ahead of you, you should be absolutely devastated, because he is utterly dreadful. He is not competent at his job in the slightest. And the problem Xander's had is he's been paired with that lunatic, and it is not doing him any help.
Yeah. What was your take on Xander tonight then, Craig?
I didn't see very much of him. I thought, and that's what was probably more disappointing for me. I thought he's sorted his scrummage out, and he was scrummaging quite well. But that's as much as I really saw. I saw him carry a couple of times, and it's quite some good carries out of him. But that's as much as I really.
He was involved. I mean, he didn't get much credit for it because he didn't emerge with the ball. But the turnover maul on the Lions line in the second half, he was kind of at the back disrupting quite well, I thought. Which was good. It's a shame. I don't think he's been. I think, like John says, they've obviously kind of prepared the props in some way beforehand, because we've seen the kind of established pairings play so far, and I don't think he's been given much of a chance. But when Jones went down tonight, so it's only one injury for you being kind of shifted around and moving up the pecking order. But I don't think he's not done enough, I don't think, to be near the test side.
Can I just that's the wrong one. Can I just argue what is backsplaining? Alan McDonald, is John talking about Xander backsplaining? What is backsplaining? Explain to me.
Oh, it means explaining, like mansplaining. So explaining to backs, I think. Oh, Ross McDowell, see previous comment, read back explaining. There we go.
Oh, right. So Greenwood talking about Xander. Okay. Yeah. Got you.
So Ross McDowell made a comment that said Greenwood was flagging how well Xander did. Appreciate that's not saying a huge amount. So it's back explaining.
I think it could be it could be between Xander and Sinclair for a spot on the bench. Because every time I've seen Xander play, apart from these, I think when he the first game he played, he was suffering again of putting his feet too far back in the scrum. But that was all sort. He kind of clicked back into what he's been coached again, and his feet came forward a little bit. Mako, I don't want to slate Mako too much because he's had a phenomenal career and he has been a fantastic prop, but he has looked out of his depth.
He's living on absolute legacy at this point. He was unfit this season at Saracens. He's been completely bang average for England for quite a few years. He's been dining out on. I mean, he's not even been dining out on actual talent. He was out of his depth in 2013 in the Australia tour. He should have been hooked for Grant all the way back then. He's been an average prop all his days, and for some reason he's got away with it. It's absolutely disgraceful.
And while we're on props, then shall we talk about Rory Sutherland then, because he seems to be paired with Furlong. For most of the games, and he did very well, I thought, about the weekend.
I think he's going to be a test player.
Yeah,
he had
100%.
to be. I think Wyn Jones tonight looked okay. Let me take that back. He looked decent, but I think Suz has really shown. And if I rewind right back to the beginning when I first started coming on the podcast, I was saying Suz is going to be a bolter, and I really do think it's going to be. I think he's done an incredible job. He's like Chris Harris, but in forward form.
Yeah. Who have we got next then? Mish. I mean, he had a quiet game at the weekend, but it's quiet by Hamish Watson's standard. It's still, an excellent Tom Curry performance, isn't it?
Honestly, the Tom Curry hype train, or Tom Korma, as we will now know him as, I think like anyone that says that Tom Curry has anything that Hamish Watson doesn't have is talking utter crap. And I'm just going to call it out. Hamish Watson has been sublime in this tour, and even when he's playing within himself, he's still one of the best players in the park. He is a top quality player. Top quality. Top British and Irish Lions. He is one of the best players they have at their disposal. And I am sure the coaching team see that. Tom Curry has been average.
Yeah, he's been okay. And I think you remember Tom Curry's young. I thought he had an all right game tonight. I thought he's played better as the tour has gone on. But you remember, compared to, Hamish Watson's late 20s now, and Tom Curry's 21.
Yeah.
So I think Tom Curry's on this tour because he's potentially the Hamish Watson on the next tour kind of guy. I think but it's not, Watson for me is making the test side. He makes it or we riot.
Basically, yeah. I've already got my pitchfork.
with our long-haired wigs on as we march to the British and Irish Lions HQ. I think. Sorry, John.
I was just going to say it'd be really awkward for me to riot with my Hamish Watson wig on, with my South Africa top on, wouldn't it?
I think what was shown tonight was the first half. We tried to play a South African game. We tried to kick. We kicked poorly. We tried to take them on. The only place that we actually succeeded against them was in the scrummage. The rest of it, they were a match with us in the line out in contact. They were very, very strong in contact. And we didn't see the Tooney game that we've seen with the other games. It was quite smothered. It was almost like we couldn't get quick ball. All of a sudden, when we started using the ball and we started to run the ball and get quick ball, then we started to see this almost being able to overtake them. And if we hadn't made a few judgment errors in the first half when they were down to 13 men, I think we probably could have come away with a win tonight. So on my side of things, the whole thing with Mish is sorry to labour a point, but the whole thing with Mish is he is not the average. Everyone keeps going, oh, how's he going to take on Detroit? How's he going to deal with Detroit? Well, he's not going to deal with Detroit. He's going to actually outplay him in a different way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, your point actually about tonight, see, and I think this is a point you're probably coming to, Cammy, but the halfbacks tonight were utterly honking.
Yeah. You can see because they were trying to. I know what you were saying, Craig, but you can't play the Townsend game without quick ball and without accuracy of boot. And Owen Farrell can't play the way that the Lions need him to play. And it's interesting what you were saying.
Can't play Townsend rugby. He can't.
No, there was that crossfield floated kick to the wing, and it was so slow and so inaccurate that the South Africans had all the time in the world to work out what was going on and where it was going to, who it was going to, and it was it was a penalty advantage, but that Russell lands that every day, and Russell would have seen that the winger was well marked. The South Africans were waiting for the crossfield kick then as well.
Inside, he would have tried something different. Even like in defence, Dan Bigger would have tried something different.
Yeah,
he would have done something different.
And the Colby try came because Daly kicked directly to Charleston Colby.
Yep.
Yeah.
Whereas as soon as they started to try and turn them, as soon as they got in behind him, they started getting in behind them and causing them problems. But you kick directly into Charleston Colby's hand, he's just going to run at you and run rings around you, which is what he did, and they scored a try.
It's funny because we've all been in rugby clubs, right? And we've all been in those environments where you've analysed your performance and stuff like that. Chris Harris immediately got the blame for the Chisholm Colby break and then offload. He had nothing to do with that. See, if you kick to that guy, it's like kicking to Stuart Hawke, it's like kicking to Darcy Graham. If you kick to that guy and you give him a one-on-one, he's going to absolutely destroy you. It doesn't matter who you are.
That's what I was about to say, John. I honestly would agree with you. I'm saying, Harris got burnt on the outside. Yeah, but everybody gets burnt on the outside by Colby.
Every single person.
There's very, very small amount of people will be able to actually deal with Colby on a sidestep. I agree with you on that side of things. I was only just saying that when it comes to being burnt by Colby, it was interesting to see, especially considering Harris has been such a pedestal player. Everyone's gone, look at this guy, he's phenomenal,
But that's a wake-up call for the Lions, because actually their best defender got utterly destroyed by Colby. Destroyed by him. And
I think that's why Harris was in tonight.
Yeah.
I think that's why he was playing tonight at his usual position, because they needed him to defend, because they were playing around with so many different options.
But if you kick badly to that back three, Willie, let's not get away from it as well. Willie LaRue is a phenomenal rugby player. And if you kick badly to him, he is going to destroy you as well. Colby's an amazing strike runner. South Africans have this knack of creating this balanced back three. They've got a brilliant back three. And at the heart of that is Willie LaRue. But if you give Colby any space, he's going to destroy you. And kicking directly to him is utter suicide.
I think it just shows that if it was almost a demonstration tonight that if you try and match the South Africans at what they do, you're not going to win a game of rugby. You need to play your own way and play your own game. And I know, someone said in the comments that Gregor Townsend's got coronavirus. I don't think that's impacted too much because they've played a Townsend attack plan so far, and by all accounts, he's in touch with them regularly on Zoom. So I think it's Townsend and Hoggy are isolating. I think Hoggy's out of isolation today.
He was at the game. I saw him at the game. He was warming up, helping them warm up. So he was there.
So Hoggy's at the game. I think Townsend's due to join them shortly. I think Gatlin said
he was in the box.
I was in the box. I missed that. There we go. So Townsend's back as well. So but I think obviously because they've not had him there for that much preparation, it wasn't a. There were elements of a Townsend attack plan, but it wasn't executed well because the kicking wasn't as accurate as it needs to be. The other thing that was interesting is, and we talk about the speed of the game, is what the last two games have shown, I think, is that Ali Price is needs to be the starting 9 for the Lions on, in the tests, because Gareth Davis was all over the shop, and Conor Murray just, his delivery was slow, it's inaccurate, his decision making was poor. I think as captain, I don't know if the captaincy's weighing heavy on him, but I think Davis and Murray have both been very poor, whereas you saw the difference Paris made at the weekend when he came on.
I'm going to give Johnny McGuinty a smile, because I'm going to eat my words, because Ali Price outshines absolutely the two other halfbacks. Conor Murray tonight wasn't even a good captain. He couldn't even argue. He couldn't even make the point with the ref tonight, and get the ref to look at the right things.
Why would he be a good captain? He's never been a captain. That's ultimately what it comes down to. If you pick a guy who's never been captain, he's not going to be a good captain.
He's such a bad captain that Alan Wynne-Jones has risen from the dead. They've probably had to physically restrain him from swimming to South Africa to put things right.
Oh man, it was, and he's kicking was bad. I just was thrown by it, because I thought, this guy's meant to be and I actually thought he was going to do all right, but he was shocking tonight. And then the big problem I have is no matter what anybody says, I've got a major hang up with Farrell, and unfortunately he was the stopper in the bottle tonight, and eventually they started chucking the ball at him and just getting on with it, and he had to start. I think somebody had a word with him at half time and said, you're going to have to stop doing what you're doing, and actually play the way we want you to play. And his ball started to move a little bit. It was it was painful to watch.
What's interesting for me is that Finn Russell, for people that don't know, I know some people that tune into this and get all their news from this, but so Finn Russell's got an Achilles injury and is currently in a moon boot. They're hopeful he'll be fit for the tests, and they've called up Marcus Smith as a replacement. Now that says to me that Finn Russell is always going to be in the test squad, and it's probably just a toss up between him and Biggar as to who starts.
Yeah.
Someone with an Achilles injury is, if they're not in serious contention and that aren't having a game plan built around them, is on the first boat back to the UK because of surplus to requirements, and you might as well go and have all your rehab. They're obviously pinning a lot on Russell being fit. Now, it's interesting you were saying about Biggar rolling his ankle, Craig, because I wonder how much of the Russell thing is the same, that he is carrying a bit of an injury, but an Achilles tear, which apparently it is a long layoff. That's not a moon boot for a couple of weeks and see how you go. We're talking months. So I just wonder are they happy with his levels of fitness? Are they happy with what they've seen from him and what he's doing? And they think, look, let's just keep our powder dry with our two first choice fly halves. We can get Marcus Smith in to kind of do what Finn Russell does in training and fill in a little bit. Let's just rest these guys and keep them fit.
I think Gatland was said that Finn's been running with this injury for some time, though, even before he came out on tour, I should say. So, is it? I think you're. Hopefully, it's hopeful thinking and wishful thinking, and I hope it's going to happen. But I think it is that they're resting him and just going to see how let him play it and let him blow it in the last couple of tests. And if it is going to tear, let him go for it in the test. I don't know.
He's a Scottish player. He would have been sent home 100% if he wasn't fit. If he wasn't available for the tests, he would have been sent home.
Well, look what they did to their captain.
Yeah,
out the door. So, he's back now, but
out the door, and paddleboard back. Dun, 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 dun. I just saw that Conor Murray was captain, and I thought, you know what, I need to make this back.
I'm not having that.
Last spotted off the coast of Ivory Coast.
Just stared at his shoulder until it repaired itself.
No, I think you guys are absolutely right. I think like Russell has been definitely considered for a test role. I think Marcus Smith's been brought out as a direct replacement for Russell. Whether he is as good as Russell or not, he's not. But that's up for other podcasts to wax lyrical about. I think Russell is clearly in the mix, and if Russell is even remotely fit, given the way Bigger played it midweek, Bigger was honking midweek. Let's address that just now. Bigger was honking, right? Bigger was classic Bigger. He absolutely kicked the bed against an average team, and this is what Bigger does. And then you had obviously Farrell tonight. Like, I feel bad because I give Owen Farrell a riot of a time on this podcast, but he was cack. He done like everything that Owen Farrell could have done wrong tonight. He did, and he done it spectacular.
He looks like a man who hasn't played 10 at international level for a while, and he is a man who hasn't played 10 at international level for a while.
I know, and it's almost like the Lions went, "Oh, we've got a backup plan. We can play Farrell at 10. Hold on. Oh, Finn's injured. Let's play Farrell at 10. That's a great shout." Marcus Smith will start at the weekend.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because Marcus Smith is. There was a kind of rugby pass, one of these clickbaity things, but someone had asked, Finn Russell, who's the best fly half that you've played against? Is Marcus Smith. It was one of the best fly halves he's played against, and he really rates him. So, who knows? He's won one Premiership final.
I think he is a fantastic player. He's an exciting player. What I'm interested to see is how he's going to mature and how he's going to become. What the player he's going to become. Yeah, you're right. You're right, John. I don't think he's at the level of Finn Russell that Finn Russell is now. But if you think of Finn Russell at Glasgow, I think Marcus Smith is very, very similar to him. At this moment in time,
I think you're absolutely right. I think they are at a similar level of So I think Finn was probably more. I hate the term maverick, but Finn probably threw a lot more risky passes at that point. I think there's an element of Marcus Smith playing in the Premiership, which means he doesn't get away with that quite as much. But I think they both have a similar level of they want to play rugby. And that's great to see, and they have that similar mentality on the game. However, you're absolutely right. I think a 28-year-old Finn Russell is very different to a 21-year-old Finn Russell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The only other name I don't think we've mentioned, I think we've covered most of I think we've covered all the Scottish lads apart from Stuart Hogg, who's been either isolating or have had COVID and living on his own with microwave meals in Johannesburg because they had to leave him behind. There tonight, as you said, Craig hadn't spotted him, but it's a good spot. I think it's a shame he's not had much game time, but again, aside from Josh Adams, who actually felt, even though he's not, I think he's normally a winger, I think, rather than a 15. Yeah. Nobody else is putting the hand up for the 15 spot, so I can't see anybody standing in his way for a starting test spot, Craig.
I think they missed him tonight. I think they in attack them, but then again, I think he probably would have reminded Owen Farrell that they're playing a certain way. Do
you think they might have started Hogg at 10? If he'd been fit tonight? Hey, stranger things have happened.
Tell you, wait till the other players get COVID and they start with Finn Russell and Hogg in the same at 10 and 12, and then you've got cats that are really going on as well. Ali Price, Finn Russell, and Hogg. Yeah, okay, there we go.
Harris at 13, Duhan at 14.
Oh, I can hear the English media.
You could do
dropping already.
I know. Let's just throw. Do you know what we should do? We put Hogg at fullback, okay, and we have Price at 9, Finn at 10, 12 Harris, 13 Hamish Watson.
Absolutely brilliant, obviously. Yes. Yep, there we go.
Yes, and watch the English tears roll in and just let them lubricate my happiness.
So, as it stands, things are looking pretty rosy, I would say, for the Scottish Lions, which is no bad thing. I don't think we would have predicted this. I think we were kind of talking at the start too. Look, a couple of lads in the test squad will be fine, but it's looking.
You know what, the guys have came on tour and they've done absolutely everything that's been asked of them, and I think in particular call out to Chris Harris. Chris Harris has been immense, and I've criticised Chris Harris. I've also absolutely slabbered over Chris Harris's performances in the Six Nations. Chris Harris has been utterly superb as a British Irish line.
I would
He is
throw Ali.
brilliant.
I'm going to throw Ali Price in there as well, because I agree with Craig.
Absolutely. Ali Price has been
Ali. You look at
magnificent.
where Ali Price was 2 seasons ago for Scotland, and just I think we were all worried when Greg Laidlaw hung up his boots, as good as Greg Laidlaw was. But Ali Price has really stepped up his game. I'm genuinely excited to see these Scottish players come back from this Lions tour and start playing for Scotland and
100%.
Glasgow and Edinburgh. I think that, well, not Edinburgh because do hands off to Worcester, but you've got Hamish Watson back, but still, I think that's it is genuinely exciting to see how much they've raised their game and really kind of fighting for a starting test place.
They've been magnificent.
They really have. Yeah, absolutely.
They genuinely, like, no matter what happens over the next couple of weeks, I think every one of those Scottish players who've went on tour should be incredibly proud of the effort they've put in, and they could have done no more to actually influence the selectors. They've been absolutely not perfect, and we've all looked at it with like Scottish rosed glasses and all that sort of thing. We've been thinking, actually, they have been the best players on tour. They have been. They've been the guys who've stood out. They've been the guys who've been getting man of the match. They've been the guys who've done the work that we've all looked and went, oh, right, okay. If that, like Hamish Watson, if it was Tom Curry, we would have been literally selling papers in New Zealand and saying he's the greatest player ever in history. Duhan, same aspect. These guys have been magnificent. They've all done their part, and Ali Price, I think, has been magnificent as well. And ultimately, they've done all they can. It'll come down to national bias. It always will. And Gatlin will pick who he picks, and then we can hate him again.
But he won't pick who he picks because he's got a coaching team around him. It'd be interesting to see what happens when Andy Farrell gets out there. But he's Townsend's been released from isolation now, and Steve Tandy is defence coach, and I think they're all in as good a place as they can be.
This is the best chance
off their own backs.
Best chance we've got to have some Lions tests in a long time.
Yeah.
But Farrell coming out it's a bit of a red herring because the Irish guys have not been great on tour, and his son is actually a honking rugby player.
He's come out to give him a hug.
He really has, and maybe that's what's going to be the key. Maybe his hug is going to change him into Finn Russell.
Who knows? Right,
and that's what we said.
We're going to move on and do this now. Yes, it's Hands in the Ruck time. It's our Any Other Business section of the podcast. John, we'll start with you tonight. What's had its hands in your ruck?
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know if it was covered in last week's podcast and stuff like that, but again, every time Scottish rugby fans do their best to upset me. And the overall reaction to the cancelled tests this summer has really, really bothered me. Like, the entitlement of people being like, oh my God, I was going to watch a rugby game on the television and it got cancelled. It's utterly nonsense, guys, right? Public health comes first. It was always going to be the case when the Scotland camp got riddled with COVID right at the start. It was always a risk. all the tests were going to be cancelled. And then, on top of that, Georgia got absolutely riddled. It was never going to be the case we were going to get a summer tour. It was an experimental summer tour that we were planning to play some players who, do you know what? We always criticise the All Blacks for their one-cap wonders. We were going to one-cap wonder some people this summer.
Yeah.
And we have avoided that. And still people are getting their knickers in a twist because they didn't get to watch it on BBC.
2009, we didn't do a summer tour, and Christ, that's because we lost Ewan Murray, Chris Cussiter, and
Yeah, exactly.
Ross Ford,
Exactly. We
and
didn't.
Nathan Hines, and we thought, well, we don't have a team, lads. Let's not bother.
You look at the squad this summer, look at the players we were planning to cap, right? And genuinely, like, not being funny here, right? You genuinely tell me how many of those guys are going to be Scotland internationals in the next Six Nations?
Yeah.
Three or four, maybe. And that's been
It would
very
have been,
generous.
I think there's players like Ross Thompson and maybe even someone like Ben Vellicott and Charlie Shield. I think it's Jamie Dobie was in there as well. I think there are players who genuinely are kind of the next generation of
These
Scottish
are guys,
players.
if they're good enough, they will play, though. If they're good enough. If they're good enough.
But I think there's two ways to look at it. There's one way to look at it. There's a lot of young players who need to be absolutely hammered by a Georgian forward just to realise that they're in an international rugby.
Yeah.
And I think, and to go away with a team, an international team, and get the feeling for it. And I think it's a disappointment for them. But on the other side of things, the fans' outrage rips my knitting as well, just the same as you, John, because we were on this was a no-win situation. We're either going to go there and absolutely hammer them, and everyone go, well, we didn't really learn much out of that, did we? We expected them to win, or we're going to get beaten by Romania in some sort of huge turnaround, and you go, well, look at you, you've all been beaten by Romania. This is ridiculous. So there was going to be outrage either way. So I think, and as you say, public health comes first, and public health. It's the way it is.
It's that way, isn't it? That actually, you're absolutely right. Like, if these guys go out and beat a team, do you look? So it's that thing. Do you look at a squad that beats Romania and say, well, actually, Cole Forbes should be playing for Scotland, or Ross Thompson should be playing for Scotland? Do you look at these new guys and you say, they beat Romania, so they should be playing in the next Six Nations? Of course you don't. But if they lose, you go the other way and you go, they're definitely not good enough. And that's classic Finn.
Yeah, I know. I think for me, it's a shame because you don't get many opportunities in international rugby to play dead rubbers. And these were 3 dead rubbers where you could sling an NB on. Outside of that, every game counts.
Yeah.
Even, especially given the way that they've reorganized the tours now, because you always got at least, a couple of dead rubbers over the summer. But now, post-COVID, we were on a promise to tour New Zealand at some point, and you can't, it's not like in the past where we have a game against Tonga or Samoa, and stick a couple of guys a couple of new caps and see how they get on. You can't do that anymore. Ross McDowell there with hands in the rock, drummers who threaten to play songs really fast.
I do that a lot.
I don't think that's helping your cause, Ross. I wouldn't keep going on about it.
That's it, Ross. Keep selling that, buddy. Keep selling it.
Craig, your hands in the rock.
My hands in the rock. I think you guys have touched on it before in the podcasts of yore. But I had to just mention it because I got a little bit upset this week with the outrage of, look at those football fans from the rugby community. How terrible are those football fans? This is ridiculous. That would never happen with it. I'm sorry, but all types of in society, we have nice people and we have idiots. And unfortunately, whether you're a rugby player, you've got idiots, or whether you're a football fan, you've got idiots, and you need to accept that. Unfortunately, because football has a bigger audience and a bigger fan base. It looks like they have more idiots than they have decent people, or when it comes to rugby. But we all have seen and been around these people in a rugby club. We need to get off our high horses and just get on with it.
Can we be very clear that what Craig's talking about here with idiot is racists?
Not just racist, but I think it's not. But I think it's the whole rugby. It's the whole rugby superiority thing of our fans would never do that. Our fans would never riot at Wembley and charge.
That was more the point. Yeah,
charge and riot and cause destruction, which is utter nonsense because. It doesn't take long to Google to see what happens in Cardiff on International Rugby Days or to see what happens at Twickenham at the Army-Navy game. And I know a couple of people pointed out to me, this was going to be my hands in the work as well, Craig, so this is good. We can have a wee back and forward about it. But people have said, well, the Army-Navy game's not typical rugby, but there are plenty Twickenham residents to complain about the behaviour of rugby fans on match day. I think one of the issues, you're right, Craig, is you're scaling up the idiots. Because there's more, it's a bigger sport and rugby is a minority sport. I also think that football, the football crowd doesn't get the same free passes that the rugby crowd gets. And I've been in Embron, seen the behaviour of rugby fans that would not be tolerated by the police if it was football fans, because the police would be on edge and thinking, oh, this is going to turn nasty. And maybe that is because of the reputation football fans have got from the past. But, somebody else kind of pointed out and reminded me, actually, I think we talked about this on the podcast previously before, John, is the Super Saturday at Murrayfield a few years back, where they did the finals day, and then they had the 1872 Cup game at the end.
That's
was
right.
Utter carnage. There were fights in the stands at Murrayfield that day.
That's right,
Guys ejected. It was a really bad atmosphere.
A really bad day.
Yeah. Sorry, John.
That's all right. No. When you encourage supporters to turn up all day, drink beer all day, and you encourage that rivalry. And do you know what? I think, actually, in this instance, I'm going to criticise the SRU for the way that this artificial rivalry that's been created between Glasgow and Edinburgh. We joke about it on this, and I hope everyone knows that I joke about Edinburgh. I don't actually dislike Edinburgh. I quite like watching Edinburgh rugby, believe it or not.
It's okay. I despise Glasgow. Don't worry about it.
That's okay. Good. I'm glad, and I'm glad you embraced that rivalry the SRU have created for you. It was the culmination. The Super Saturday stuff was a culmination of marketing, and it was idiots who had too much bevy. We've all seen them at international games. We've all seen them, we've actually all seen them at club games as well.
Yeah.
Idiots who have too much drink and they just kick off. And you know what? I've been criticised for my view on whether rugby could learn from football in the past. And do you know what? Rugby has had such a privileged position on football for many, many years, and we've not done anything to deserve that over the last few years. No. We have continued to abuse that.
If we grow as a sport, it's going to be tested severely at some point.
100%.
And everyone will say these aren't real rugby fans when it happens, but it's just people in society coming along and. This is what happens.
You've got no control over what a real rugby fan is. You've got control over who gets a ticket. That's it. And if people are able to buy tickets, they're able to be a rugby fan. That is ultimately it.
It goes back though, and this is where the link between the club game, the professional game, and then the international game is all connected. Being part, I'm talking about many different clubs here. I'm not just talking about my own in case anyone thinks I'm just talking about my own club. But you have clubs, I've been at clubs where someone ends up standing butt naked at a bar. It's banter, they're having a laugh.
Yep.
Nowadays, life has changed. we now have situations where we now have clubs that have women's teams in them. We have clubs that have children we've had clubs that have had children coming into them for a long time, and we have to realise that everybody must feel safe going to a game, that whether they're a fan of the team, a local team, whether they're paying their ticket money, because we pay enough for our tickets to go and watch Scotland or go and watch Edinburgh. We should be anybody who turns up there with a ticket stub should be feeling safe as they go in there. And so I think the issue is more the days of they're just boys having a few drinks, so I'll just let them have a few drinks. That is starting to change, and we have to manage it correctly.
Yeah.
And we have to.
I've seen worse behaviour at a rugby match than I have at football. I've been to football matches, had no bother at all, and I loved the day out, and great crack with everybody around me. And then I've been to rugby matches where I've been quite kind of on edge on public transport and stuff, just because somebody's getting carried away at the end of the road, and you think
saying that sort of thing, Cameron, will get you mentions on Twitter, and will get you possible death threats in your mentions. So I've
had it this week with people telling me, when I put this up, somebody had said, "Oh, no wonder rugby has a superiority complex," and I put a few screenshots of news items about the behaviour of rugby fans. That's all I said.
It's nothing about superiority. It's we're trying to create a culture where people can go to sport and be safe, and that doesn't matter if it's rugby, football, bloody netball, or anything. It's about being safe at your sport.
There'll be someone fighting at a burger van at Silverstone this weekend coming.
Yeah, there will be
too much in the campsite, and they've decided that they want their burger before the next person. There are people out there, no matter what sport we follow, that are just idiots, and that's going to happen.
How much of this though? So just to kind of change the subject very slightly, you're absolutely right. Like, your club sets the tone, Craig.
Yeah.
And see if you're attending a game, see if you're involved in rugby at any level in Scotland, you represent your club. And that's what I was always told from like age 5, playing mini rugby and going to games. You represent your club on that day.
Yeah.
How important is that? And how important is it for clubs to set that standard and set that zero tolerance to say, do you know what? Yeah, we're going to say, do you know what? You got a wee bit drunk today. But actually, that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable, the behaviour you displayed at that point. There has to be zero tolerance.
Yeah. It's interesting that Rona Sweeten says a brilliant point from Craig about... I can't add this comment now. Brilliant point from Craig about people feeling safe, especially amateur rugby games. The days of accepting the rugby lad is over. And I think it's interesting that, I've been seen rugby speeches given, years ago, and you thought at the time you cringed, that's not right. But even that's changing. A lot of the after club dinners now, the standard of the speeches is much improved. You haven't got the same old tired jokes, homophobic, other phobic jokes being rolled out, that guys are finding different ways to be entertaining in different ways, and without having to go down that route. So it is changing, but I think that, coming back to what started this, Craig, is we cannot claim superiority over football in any way, shape, or form. It's just that's something that happened in football. We've got problems in rugby. There's somebody in the comments saying, how often have you felt frightened going to a rugby match compared to going to an England football match? Well, I've been in Newcastle on Newcastle Sunderland match days, and it's been fine. Do you know what I mean? It's been no different to going to Murrayfield. I think people have a perception of how things goes, and yes, sometimes it does kick off for whatever reason, because of idiots is normally the reason. But 9 times out of 10, most football matches pass without incident.
I've been to Old Firm games. I'm a West of Scotland guy. That's my beef. I've been to Old Firm games and I felt fine. I've been to rugby games and felt there has been tension. And that's if you can compare, like, we have this superiority complex where we believe rugby is so much more than football. If you compare it to the most visceral, absolute hateful game in football, which is the Old Firm game. And you're able to say, I happily walked about fans, I happily talked to fans of both sides that day, and then you compare it to rugby, and you have an issue with that. That's a problem.
Yeah.
And I will say one thing, and I do have to go back to your point, John. The social media outrage that's happened with the racism side of things is abhorrent, and I would certainly, I wasn't trying to, what's the word? I wasn't trying to kind of brush that aside. I think that was absolutely abhorrent. But it was more because we're a rugby chat rather than a football chat. But I think
I think on that though, Craig, is that there's still people who will say that isn't an issue in rugby, and I think that's still disappointing because there's plenty of evidence that that's just as much of an issue in rugby as it is in any walk of life, including football, racism and discriminatory behaviour. I mean, as Rory Duncan's pointing out, saying, rugby can't claim the moral high ground where, the exit still play the tomahawk chop, which we've talked to death on this podcast. And, there's a really good documentary, if no one's seen it, it's Benno Urbano and Maro Toji produced a documentary that's on Amazon, which I can't remember the name of it now off the top of my head, but that's all about being a black player, a black rugby player, and what it means and how they were treated. And it's really interesting and well worth a watch if you've got the time. It's free on Amazon Prime. I don't think we've got any more for any more. We've got lots of people giving plenty of examples of trouble they've had at rugby games. So I think we're preaching to the converted in the comments.
I was only going to say that and this is back to a thing I said a few weeks ago, we all have a responsibility. Every single time we attend a rugby game, every single time we attend our club, every time we turn up in that dressing room, we have a responsibility to make it a welcoming environment. And see if we could all just not be absolute and utter idiots and just invite people in. Our sport's a minority sport. And I want everyone to remember that. We are a minority sport in Scotland. We are competing with football, which will dominate headlines. We need to put ourselves forward. We need to promote ourselves as being a good sport for people to be part of.
And calling it Wendy Ball and saying we're our fans are better, and saying our fans are better isn't a way of being kind and inviting people in and selling the sport. It just alienates people. You think, well, I'm not going to go with you sanctimonious bunch of gits.
100%. Yeah. Be kind, be welcoming, promote your sport, promote rugby. Rugby's a great sport, but you need to promote it. And do you know what? If you do that and you do it in the right way, you'll get the right people involved.
The thing is, all rugby fans are football fans, but not all football fans are rugby fans, and that's the truth of the matter.
Correct. Yes. 100%, Cammy. 100%.
Yeah. On that note, then, I think that's it for this week. We're back next Wednesday. We'll have the build up to the test. The week after, I'm on holiday, so I miss out. John will probably be in the chair, I would imagine.
Are you missing test one?
I'll be. I'm not going to miss it, but I'll miss the podcast after because I'm on holiday.
Am I in charge for pod? That's going to be amazing when South Africa team.
I'm a little bit worried about how excited he is with that. What?
Thing is, John, I have internet where I'm going. I'm only going to stay at the mother-in-law's. I can't take the kit with me if you're going to get too excited. So let's not.
I will deliver a spectacular podcast. Yeah. It will be fine.
So yes. So join us next week. I'll see if I'm going to let John off the leash or whether I'm going to do a live podcast from my mother-in-law's house. Join us next week for more chat. Wednesday night, 8:30 as usual. I don't think it's a midweek game next week, is there? Next game's on the Stormers game. Is
Saturday. Stormers,
Stormers, and then it's the first test we've got.
Saturday then test, yeah.
So it will be 8:30 next Wednesday rather than 9 o'clock as we've been doing them because of the games. So for the moment, though, it's goodbye from me and goodbye from John and Craig.
Hi, guys.
Bye.